Hey comrades, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics. In this DCS Mil-24P video, we'll review the use of several different unguided weapon systems for the Hind. This will include the 30mm cannon, the Gov machine gun pods, and unguided rockets. Later, we'll explore bombs and the submunition dispenser. For the 30mm cannon, S5 and S8 rockets, and the Gov machine gun pods, a continuously computed impact point can be displayed on the ASP-17 gun sight for good accuracy. All other weapons are based on manual sightings, but you do receive optimal range data for several of them. When matching the correct weapon against the selected target, the weapons can have a devastating effect against unarmored and lightly armored vehicles. Let's get started. Okay, so before we start sending some rounds down range, let's go set up the weapon panels. First, I'm going to remove the cyclic so I have a good view at the weapon panel here in the pilot seat. First, we have our fire control switch. And in many ways, you can think of this like a master arm switch. Up is in the arm position, down is in the disarm position. Up in the top left corner, we have our range source, with down being manual ranging. And using the dial right below it, we can actually set our manual range. So let's say I set it to 500 meters, and I look up here on the ASP-17 gun sight, we see a range arc here which equates to 500 meters. Coming back down, let's set that to say 2,000 meters. And now we see a range arc which equates to 2,000 meters. In the up position, now it's going to have automatic ranging. And also when we have it automatic ranging, we're going to have a green light here in the corner of the ASP-17. So in automatic ranging, it's not using a fancy Gucci laser rangefinder. Rather, it's using what it's getting from the radar altimeter, which we want to make sure is on over here, and our aircraft angle. And knowing those two sides of the triangle, we can then calculate the distance. Now naturally, for this to be accurate, both the target elevation and our elevation need to be as close to each other as possible. The more delta, the more inaccurate the ranging is going to be. Moving over to the right, we have our burst length. The top is short, the middle is long, and down is medium. Which, yeah, it's a bit odd. You'd expect it to be short, medium, long, but it is what it is. For me, personally, I like to keep it in short, mainly because if you select medium or long, those bursts are going to result in a fair amount of recoil, and it's going to make it a lot more difficult to get concentrated fire on your pipper. Moving over, we have our recharges for the rocket pods. Then we have the sight power to the ASP-17. Below that is our zero sight, which we'll take a look at later in the ATGM video. And then right below that, a little to the right, is our rocket switch. Now, if we had rockets both on the left and right winglets, and we fire rockets, it would come from both sides of the aircraft in the middle position. If we go to the left, it would just come from the left side of the aircraft, and we go to the right, it would just come from the right side of the aircraft. In the center, we have our weapon selector dial. The far left one is our off missile selection, and that corresponds to our anti-tank guided missiles, or ATGMs, which will be the subject of our next video lesson. Clockwise from that, we have our GM30, and that is our Gov pod for the grenade launcher. Then we have fixed MG762 plus 12.7, and that is the Gov machine gun pod, and we'll fire both of those machine gun types at the same time in that selector. Then we have MG 12.7, and as you might have guessed, that will fire just a 12.7 machine gun from the Gov pod. Then we have 762, and it'll fire both 762 machine guns from the Gov. Then we have MG 30, and that's our big 30mm cannon on the side of the aircraft. Then we have rockets. Then we have bombs, and then USLP is our submunition dispenser. Here we have our switch to set our fire rate. In the down position is low fire rate, and the up position is at high fire rate. So again, just for me, I prefer to have it in the up position, mainly because when you're going against a target, particularly something armored like an IFV, You're going to want to get as many rounds on target as possible while the pipper is in your optimal range. So having in the increased fire rate is going to achieve that. And then finally, we can arm the jettison system here and either jettison stores or the launchers, but we won't do that today. Okay, coming back up, let's take a look at the ASP-17 gun sight here. And to the left, we have two switches. The lower switch is the selector between the manual sight, which we see right now, or if we go up, we now have the assisted sight, which in many ways you can think of it as a continuously computed impact point, or a CCIP pipper, and that you fly to place the pipper over the target, you wait for it to get optimal range, you pull the trigger, and if you have good range information, it's pretty darn accurate. Above that, we have our async and sync switch. So right now it's in async. Let's move it up to sync. And when it's in sync mode, what happens is if you fly to place the little pipper here over a moving target and you maneuver the aircraft to keep the pipper on that target for more than 2 seconds, the weapons computer will then automatically calculate lead to hit that target. Now, you also notice that between the manual sight and the automatic sight, it's a little bit cluttered. So it may be just a WAGS thing, but I'd like to take the brightness knob here and lower down the brightness of that manual sight so I can just focus on the assisted automatic sight. Also, you notice that symbology is sitting pretty darn low on the combining glass, so we can actually lower that. We can unlock it and then lower it down, just like we do actually in SU-25, and relock it. At this point, let's jump to the front seat now and talk to the operator. And first and foremost, and by far the most important thing in this cockpit, turn on the fan. And we have two big things we want to look at here. First, we're going to make sure that the safety switches that arm all the circuits is in the up position, and then that the USR switch is also in the up position. And what this does, it provides the automatic sight calculations for the pilot aiming sight. Also, if you had pods and bombs on at the same time, want to make sure that this switch is in the up position. If not, when you release the weapons, it will treat the pods like a bomb and release those as a bomb. Not a good idea. And back to the pilot seat. So at this point, I think we're ready to go ahead and do a 30 millimeter gun run. Okay, so up ahead of us and to the left is going to be our target area. We're going to turn on the white floodlight. Actually, we can go back and turn a red light on too, a little more festive. Start rolling in on the target. And you can just make out some revetments up ahead with a couple light armored vehicles, a warrior, and a martyr. At this point, I've lined up my sight up on the target area. And a little bit sliding, but good enough for what we need to do here. I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see on the sight we have a thick and thin area. As the thin area reaches the thick area, that's going to be our maximum optimal range area, and we have the yellow light illuminated saying we're in range to fire. So short little burst. And because the 30 millimeter is a very fast round, it has a very flat trajectory, I didn't have to adjust my aim too much given a slight change in elevation between the target and our elevation for that run. At this point, we'll come off the target, and now we'll set up for a Gov machine gun pod run. So we're going to come down here to the weapons panel on the pilot seat, and I'm going to change the dial to the new selection. Going back to the east, we'll be able to see actually the skyline of Nicosia up ahead of us. Okay, established on the down leg. And again, we'll have our target area off to the left. And you may notice the new Ukrainian skin. We also have skins for Iraq and the Caucasus as well as Syria. Okay, at this point, let's turn into a base for our attack. As I believe I mentioned in the setup portion of the video, we also have an indication of the selected weapon just below the ASP-17 gun sight. So we see a fixed MG for machine gun. Okay, rolling in on the target. And the big change with the GovPod is that the rounds are going to have a not as flat trajectory. So we're going to need to aim a little bit in front of the targets because of a slight elevation difference between us. So again, I'm going to be taking a look at that range arc, wait for the small thin part to hit the thick part. We see the amber light come on, so we're in optimal range. And obviously for a kinetic round, the closer you get, the better. Adds a bigger punch. A little long. Some hits there. That should do it. And come off the target. And generally I like to come off to the left, mainly because you have less obstruction of the canopy frame. It just allows you to see where you're going that much better, and particularly when rolling in on target, to keep eyes on it during the entire flight. Okay folks, so that's the gun and machine gun. Let's move on to rockets. So just over our right mirror, you can see the target area, and this is what I'm talking about with the canopy frame. If you roll in from the right, that it really obstructs your view. This is why at least I prefer to come in from the left. And just aligning myself for a good run down the length of it. And we have a couple trucks near the back of the bermed area. Now, even more so than the previous target, we'll have a much bigger elevation difference between the target area and us. So I'm going to have to aim even considerably more in front of the target. Okay, so I'm in optimal range, placing the pipper in front of the target. That's probably going to long. Adjusting. Move to the next target. And come off to the left. And again, you'll get these assisted aiming cues using the S5 and the S8 rockets, not with the S13 and the S24s. With those two rockets, you'll get the optimal range indication, but that's about it. And we can see they're both smoking. So folks, that's a little overview of using the cannon, the machine gun pods, as well as the S5 and the S8 rockets, which both operate the same. The next video, we'll take a look at the anti-tank guided missiles. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.